So cool. So what we're going to be, we'll jump in. So we're going to be talking quarterly earnings teardown, right? And this was inspired. Matt and I had a conversation maybe 3 weeks ago, a month, or maybe a little over a month ago, and we were talking about enterprise sales, and the whole focus of that was enterprise sales. And then we started to talk about this, and Matt is a guru at this. I will call you a guru, so you don't have to call yourself. You don't have to call yourself a guru. So Matt is a guru at this, and in the middle of the webinar, like, dude, let's just do this. Let's just do, instead of talking about it, because trust me, I remember when I was a rep, I was maybe 27 or 28, like probably 27, 28, when my director did a session on how to read an annual report and how to read a quarterly report, quarterly earnings readout. And so, it's definitely a skill that I think some people, they don't ever tackle because it's too daunting, or they don't know how to then turn it into insights. They get this stuff and they're like, how do I turn it in? So Matt and I talked about, okay, well, let's try to make something really tactical. I really hope that some of you are trying to sell into Tractor Supply Company. If you try to, like, literally.
No, there are. The products up is on this call, and they told me we are trying to sell, and I will hold them. I'm looking for a forecast.
Better. I mean, like, literally, I wrote email templates. Okay, I'm gonna hand you my email templates. Now you can do whatever you want with them. I did videos. Like, we're ready to rock here. So Matt's gonna kick it off and talk a little bit about the process. Like I said, really thank you, everybody. What's up, Leo? Really thank everybody for tuning in. This is going to be a really awesome session. Like I said, feel free, drop your questions, right? If you want, you can make yourself anonymous if you feel like, oh, I don't want to be stupid. Feel free to drop your questions in there. I'm going to try to tackle this in real time. I'm going to share my screen right now. I'm going to go to the PowerPoint, make sure we got that. All right. Let me make this a little bigger for everybody so they're not looking at a very small screen. Matt, you can tell me, make sure we get it in present mode, slideshow, and here we go. All right. Can you see the screen?
Good.
You're looking good. All right. Yeah. So this is, it's not the annual report. It's actually a quarterly report, but it's applicable. It's the same concepts. We actually should do just an annual report one. Like, maybe we'll do that in the new year, like once the annual reports start coming out.
I think so. I think we should break down that document, whereas this one's easier and much more accessible for everyone because it was basically an earnings release and presentation. So this is going to be good.
Yeah, and there's some websites too that I've found when we were going through this that even do some of this research for you, which was super helpful. So if you don't know me, well, hi Matt's audience. I'm Jake. If we haven't met, I'm the CEO of Skaled. We are a sales consulting company. We help with both strategic and tactical sales initiatives. We do a lot of work helping organizations both think strategically about how they're growing and scaling from a demand gen, sales, and account growth process. And then we also have a team of operations and enablement people where a lot of the work that we do in the startup world is very, number two work, where you need someone who's operations focused, you need someone who's tactics focused to really help to get a lot of these projects done. I've been in sales for a while and done a bunch of things that are somewhat interesting. That's Skaled. There's Matt. Matt, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit for my audience if you guys don't know Matt?
Yeah, perfect. So Sassy Sales Leadership, what we do is train the go-to-market leaders in SaaS companies. We have public and private workshops, and there are a few hundred of you on the call today, which I'm excited. So thank you, alumni. Great to see you here. And my fun fact for today is I was sharing with Jake. I'm actually talking to you from the place that gave me this ridiculous accent. I'm in New Zealand, and you may not know this, but if you visit New Zealand right now, you have to be a New Zealand citizen, and you're in managed isolation for 2 weeks. So I am now presently talking to you from a gilded cage. I'm not allowed out of my hotel room. But another fun fact is I'm looking out a window here at the Hewlett-Packard building that I started my career at 26 years ago. What are the chances?
I love it.
There you go.
I love it. Where the first time you started taking down these big deals. Well, awesome. All right. So we're going to jump into it. So without further ado.
Let's start off. So I get the first half of this session, which I'm excited for, and it's basically how I researched Tractor Supply Company. Turns out they do more than tractors these days, but it's a great name that they've kept for connecting to their audience, which you'll hear about in a minute. So when I'm researching a company, whether it be through earnings releases or the quarterly reports, which are called the 10Q, or the annual reports, the 10K, these are the key things I want to understand, right? So self-explanatory, but I want you to remember this sentence. My alumni will know this because I keep harping on about it, right? An executive will take a meeting with you, right? And they'll find you relevant if they think that you know something that they need to know now. The key thing there is now. So in this moment, are you on the executive agenda priorities? And so that's what I've sought to do here today in partnership with Jake, figure out what do they care about and whose opinion matters. So how did I do this? Jake's driving slides for me. Okay. First off, Tractor Supply, how did I research? I basically listened to a investor relations call and then looked at their investor presentation deck. Total time, so just so you know, around about 2 hours, which is going very fast. And I would spend more time if I was, a rep myself. But in 2 hours, you'll see what I got, which will be pretty insightful nuggets. So let's click through to the next slide.
Yeah, and the beautiful part is, look, Matt, unlike whenever we were doing this, there wasn't such thing as like 1.5 speed, right? It's like you're just watching this as it goes through. But 2 hours, there you go, everyone. 2 hours to do a high level on this for a strategic account. I think that's important. A lot of people wonder how much time. 2 hours.
Yeah. So now the other thing I will say to you is in-person research is important. I don't know if you can see me in this picture here, but I went in disguise. It was cleverly disguised to find out what it is they did. And what I found, Jake, is if you click through, that their bulk of what they do is focused on the rural lifestyle. And much of what they do is livestock and pet supplies and food. They're a very purpose-driven company. So they use this catchphrase called "Life Out Here," which is, we connect with you because we know who you are. Life Out Here is that rural lifestyler. They've got about 40,000 staff, 1,200 stores. So they're a really significant organization. And an important thing to know too, if you're talking to their executives, is they're very, very committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which makes me happy. They have about 49% of their staff being female, and they actually publish their environmental, social, and government stats on their website. So they really hold themselves accountable. So pretty cool company. So let's start by figuring out who they serve. They serve the needs of recreational farmers and lifestylers. So think about that for a minute. Where might their store locations be? Where there's land, so that you can be a pretend farmer, a hobby farmer. You can have some chickens, some ducks running around, perhaps, and a little bit of land. And they really try and connect with their customers by messaging that their own staff are just the same as their people. And when I looked at the executive team, it was really interesting. The average tenure was well over a decade. So they get in there and they are these people. That's who they are. It gives them purpose and meaning, and they're not going anywhere. It's important to know, I think, because when you go and approach a company like that, where someone's got a decade of tenure with a company, you need to be pretty careful about sharing quote, quote, insights with them about their business, right? You can come off half-baked pretty bloody easily. And in terms
that's
of
a key, Matt, can you go deeper on that? Because I think that's a key, right? Is that I think a lot of people feel like they find some insight and then they go to an executive, and that executive, is a VP of marketing or the CRO or the CMO. How do you balance that? How do you balance like the right amount of insight versus know-it-all, right? Like, or like, I think I know it all, but I'm really uninformed. Like, how do you think about the tone or how you go about, and I'll talk about it later, but how do you think about that piece? Because I think that's where a lot of people struggle to actually get the meeting, is they come off that way.
Good question. Yeah, I think there's two things. Thinking about the two types of sales motions. One is where there's an obvious and identified problem by them. You're kind of doing the solution sell, the value sell, or whatever it is. They know they want something and they're looking for it. That's a bit easier, because all you need to do then is demonstrate that you have technical expertise in the solution they're seeking. So be an expert in the solution versus an expert in their industry. The provocative sell, or the challenger style sell, that's much more fraught. And that's what I think what you're getting at, Jake, is if I come in and try and tell you, hey, here's a new way of thinking about what you're doing, you better have really deep domain expertise. So you either know about their industry really, really well, or you know a very narrow slice of it extremely deeply based on what your solution set is. For example, I'll be talking later a little bit about their omni-channel initiatives. You better really understand what the contemporary thinking in digital retailing is and how it might apply to their business before you talk to their chief digital officer. Last point on that, just because you raised it, I was talking to a company the other day. I think it's a perfect example. They had 48 staff total, and they do mobile marketing automation, and they're seeking to sell to companies Albertsons or Kroger's, these really big retailers, and say that their machine learning and their AI will serve up better recommendations than what they could build themselves in-house. Well, I had a look at those companies. I think it was Kroger's I looked at. They had 48 people with data science titles, most of whom who had PhDs. Like, I couldn't believe it. They actually had 48 PhDs in that. And this company only had 48 employees. So there's no credibility there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's a good one. I remember we talked about that one.
Yeah. So how do you do this? So you start off with this inverted pyramid. I'd like you to think about it like this as a framework. So start with the external factors that are going to affect the company, everything that's going on in the world, drill it down into the corporate, how that affects the company itself, and then of course the department. And so what we're going to do is do that. And this year was particularly important to look at external, of course, with COVID. And on the right-hand side is a little example of the way that external factors flow into the corporate strategy. So for Tractor Supply Company, we'll see that really good interest rates right now have a huge impact on their investment strategy.
I love it. Screenshot this, Pete. We'll send the slides out, but I think this is one that I think can just be a very simple guide for you, of like, okay, well, what's happening in the world, what's happening in the macro, which is what we're going to talk about with the company, and then thinking about some of these departmental needs. So I love that one.
Yeah. So let's dive into the external. So there are really three key themes that they talked about, which is number one, looking after their people. So how can you help here? I was thinking about this and I was, well, obviously the shift to work from home. Now, for a company like this is massive. They have never previously had many people working from home at all. So just a multitude of opportunities about reducing security risks. Can you imagine that? Taking everything home, creating homework environments, simple things like, we know that they really care about their people. So what about stuff like screen time monitoring, right? Are they working 10 hours and is their health failing as a result of it? Make sure they don't overwork. What about collaboration tools? I'm talking to you, Slack, you name it. The next one, thanking the team. And you can see on the slide that they're doing things like family meal appreciation. So they literally send out, family meals for their employees, which is cool. But what about other ideas like Sendoso? I can look at you lots, right? The direct-to-home type offering, right? What about peer appreciation point systems? There's companies like Bonusly and others where you can give each other points and they can buy real things in the real world. So that could be interesting. And then lastly, they're investing in the communities they serve. Nothing leapt out at me there, but I think two interesting areas that folks on the call could hook onto there. Right, so that brings us down to the next layer of the company. I always like to look at what the CFO is thinking about, right? Because I'm worried about all the initiatives might be interesting, but if we're cash constrained, we've got a problem. But it turns out they're in a really good spot, right? So the way retailers think about financial performance is they look at comparable stores. They call it store comps. So they'll take a store that's the same square footage year over year and compare all those stores. And like for like, they're up 21%, which is awesome in this environment, right? And here's some language if you're selling to them you want to use. They talk about consumables, usable, and edible categories, CUE. So if I was talking to them, I might think about, okay, how can I help them increase sales in CUE, right? They've got strong growth in financing, so people are buying tractors on tech or on credit. Their reward program's going really well. Things that they're thinking about. Domestic carrier costs were down, which helped their margins, but they expect them to go up. So as they expect increased sales and profitability being available in Q4, they're worried about ensuring that the margin stays constant. So what does that mean for you? And we'll come to that later. Some of you have got logistics, analytics, supply chain solutions. That'll be really interesting to the CFO. The good news is that the wallet's going to be fairly loose. If you go to the next slide, Jake, we can see here they're really in a position to invest. They've got cash in the bank. You can see that at the top right-hand side. And they're also able to reduce their interest costs by refinancing. So I think now is a really good time to be talking to them about investment because they've got money to spend.
Yeah, and I think we had a question here from Marcus Sparks that I think is relevant to the last couple of points. It's just how do you serve up the information to a contact who needs to be the expert? But may respond, yeah, I know that. Why are you wasting my time? And I think if I can just summarize, Matt, and then, get your take, is what Matt's getting at is like, it's more about saying that you understand that potential gaps or where they're going next. I think, again, to what Matt said at the very beginning about, I need to know what's happening around the corner. As an executive, I'm thinking next corner, and because of COVID, some timelines have changed now. So I think as long as you're basing it in, hey, these are initiatives that we understand, and guess what, we could have called stores, et cetera, and done some of that research, and which we both would have done if this is really a target account. But again, it's not about saying this is what I know. It's about helping them to see, look, and therefore, what is that probably causing, and then therefore, where do you fit in? It's that future state versus I know this based on that problem you have now. I can do that thing. Well, I already know that. We're already working on it.
And also, look, the way I've always done it in my career was I don't call it out directly either, right? So let's click through to the next slide, and I'll just build on that point, Jake. It's about, because we know this, it means we can approach the right people with relevant discussion points, right? It's not about coming in and saying, oh, this is because you're doing blah. It's what I do is I pretend I don't know, right? I just go in and say really relevant stuff to them, and they're like, shit, this guy's really, well, that's interesting, right? And they don't know why I'm relevant or whatever else, because I've done my homework, right? That's been my technique. It's not the only technique, but I choose not to let them know what I know. I don't come and say, oh, because you're refinancing this, blah, blah, blah. I just go in and give them something really relevant and say, and unless it's a tactical solution, okay?
Yep, love it.
So here are the key strategies, right? A call out I want to give you is this, like if you were looking at this earnings release as I was, I'm learning their language, right? You can see language on the right-hand side, like one tractor or going the country mile. I would use that language when I'm talking to them, right? So let's start off with legendary customer service, which is a key strategy that came from the merchandising officer. They have three key initiatives. Number one is tech, which is exciting. So they've just implemented some new tech for AI and analytics to make sure that each store is stocked with the right category and SKU, stock keeping unit, for each location. So they're not going to put tractors in the New Jersey location. They'll put it in the middle of the country. They're investing in CRM. So what have you got to do around that? There's so many ways we can plug into that, data analytics, et cetera, et cetera. And they're also investing in their Neighbors Club, which is their loyalty card. So I'm sure many of you got offerings that might connect to that. And lastly, this was really interesting to me. An acronym they use is GURA, which is greet. This is for their staff members in store. Greet, uncover the need, recommend, and then ask, which is close, close, close. Now, part of this initiative was that they tested training and certification of their staff members, and they saw a 2% sales increase for the staff that were certified versus those who weren't. So if you've got a knowledge management system, you've got a certification system. Jake, you know anyone who's got a sales training methodology or a closing system that could sell to them?
I do.
Oh, good. Yeah. Send them a note. So that's one initiative. Another one is One Tractor, which is about the customer experience being consistent across all channels. So they've got a mobile app we'll talk about in a second, omni-channel fulfillment, they're focused on the website, and they want to make sure that the digital experience stays ahead of customer expectations. So I called you out before, products up, right? This is an opportunity so big, I think you could drive a tractor through it, right? The Tractor Way, operational excellence. So they're talking here about space productivity in store. And I'm guessing someone on this call has tech with merchandising analysis or something that looks at ROI per square foot. They're looking at supply chain capabilities and reducing costs and being more efficient. Labor productivity. This is interesting. So they want to free up staff hours of people in store so they're more available for the customer experience. And what they've done, this is a new thing, is they've taken shift team leads with headsets that can communicate to all the staff members on the floor, right? And they've created team shift goals, like revenue goals per shift, and they compete amongst the team. So for example, I'm the team lead, and I'll say, oh, look, I see a customer standing by the tractor, go over and talk to them about financing, right? So for tech people, what about if we had real-time leaderboards in their breakout rooms, right? They go for a coffee or whatever, and they can see where they are for their shift to create that competition, right? What about Culture Amp to check to make sure that this new sense of competition isn't actually making people feel too pressured or too salesy, right? So going the country mile, they're investing in their team members and well-being for being safe and inclusive. So, and also opportunities for growth. So you might have a people development tool or other offerings that could help them here. Last one, I couldn't really think of anything, Jake. It was healthy shareholder return. That's kind of a generic. So I didn't have much there.
All right.
So any questions we need to answer before we talk about?
Yeah, I'm going to try to, I think I've got to, let me just try to do something real quick here before I go forward. I'm going to end, let me see if I end this, if I can see the Q&A wasn't popping up for me before, and I'm just wondering if it's because I'm sharing just one component of it. Do me a favor, if you're dropping a Q&A, just because of the way we're sharing, just go ahead and drop it into chat if you don't mind. Or feel free to just send it to us as panelists if you don't want other people to see it, and I'll make sure to be on the lookout for it. But no, I think this is good. I mean, for me, my takeaway is like, I mean, how many angles, my friends? I don't care what you sell, right? Like, it doesn't matter what you sell. There's literally like the angles are there for all of you, no matter what it is that you do, just with this one piece. So we'll get into some takeaways here for these individual departments too, which I think is really valuable. And then Matt, when some questions pop up, I'll tee them up for you.
Yeah, and CUE was consumable, usable, and edible. Someone just asked, Dylan. All right, so I'm going to skip through this one quickly, but this guy here, the merchandising fellow, he's focused on outdoor lawn and garden. It's the #1 category that customers want and they don't play in. So outdoor lawn and garden. What does that mean for you? One of their initiatives is to be like a Home Depot where they have that side lot. You know, when you visit there, there's like a garden center kind of attached to it. Mm-hmm. They don't have that. So that's a big opportunity. So what? Well, they need to understand, because I've never done it before, customer behavior. So what's the traffic? So they've got an app, and many folks here would have, you know, the tracking type technology that allows to see where are they going, what are they buying, and tying that all together. So if somebody goes out into the garden center, they're more likely to spend money indoors, whatever, because they need to figure out, like a minimum viable product, is there good ROI for them in doing this stuff, and how do they enhance that? So that could be interesting, monitoring foot traffic. How can you help with the contactless buying experience? So I go online, I buy a bunch of gardening supplies, I drive up, how can you help with that? Right? That's going to be interesting to them. And I'll round off with the Chief Digital Officer, which is our next slide, Jake. They're doing so well with e-commerce, right? So they went from 1% of sales being e-commerce to 6%, which is massive. It's unbelievable. 80% of the e-commerce is actually buy online, pick up in store. So that's interesting. And the app that they just launched has 500,000 downloads. So this is going to be a very key place to play for them. So the big initiatives that stuck out for me: digitizing the in-store experience. This is a cool thing. So because I've got the app and I'm standing next to a tractor, they know that I've dwelled there for a couple of minutes. A notification will go to a shift lead to say, hey, this guy's standing by the tractors, you should go talk to him about financing options. And smart's that in real time, right? So what can you do there to help them with intelligent assistance, right? What else have they got there that I liked? Oh yeah, learning systems. They really want to improve the machine learning and AI and improve that. E-personalized content and recommendation. So if I go to the homepage to do my online experience, they actually want a one-to-one customer level experience. So I get a different experience than Jake gets when I log into the site and look at the technology. Algolia, if you're on the site, they want to optimize search and navigation on the web. They also want to have a different buying experience on the mobile app by incorporating their loyalty card. I don't even know what that means. Some of you who specialize in loyalty systems may, but using machine learning to anticipate shopping needs and incorporate that into the loyalty point system would be interesting. And the last point I want to make is kind of awesome, Jake. You know how, like, with life insurance, they talk about life events. So when I'm 21, they get me investing from my 401k, you know, and then I get married and they say you need life insurance and so forth. How about this? You buy a chicken. You buy 3 chickens because you want some eggs. They're babies. You've got to keep them alive. So they make a recommendation about the lighting systems that you need to keep them warm, then the feed that you need to grow them nice and fat, then the vitamins to make them healthy. And then I'm guessing after 12 months, they send you a rotisserie chicken recipe, right? We're talking about that.
Or maybe an egg recipe, one of the two.
But
I'm smoking 2 chickens as we speak, just to call it out.
There you go. So their language, again, is the One Tractor project. And I think that sort of customer lifecycle event-based marketing and development is really, really interesting. So I'm going to finish off here in a sec. They've got a really interesting management team that has got a tenure, most of them over 10 years with the company. So very, very important that you think about that as you're approaching them, right? Don't be the expert on their company, because that's going to bounce straight off. And to close, think about your strategy, which is our next slide. With any big company, we have to think about the way in which we approach them. So knowing that they've got a mobile app already and are focused on omni-channel experience, the first thing I'll be doing is thinking, how do I understand the experience? By downloading their app, visiting the website, and normally, as Jake said earlier, I'll probably go into the store in costume or not. And then you design your approach strategy, right? How are you going to do it? So it could be that you want to peacefully coexist. So they've got technology and you just stick onto that. That's fragmenting, you see on the right-hand side here. Or maybe you go frontal, which means you demonstrate how their current solution is significantly inferior to what you've got. Or maybe the most expensive is you seek to change the rules of the game by using a provocative selling motion, which we talked about before, which is a flanking motion. And it's how you explain your different approach or strategy can deliver the outcomes they need in a better way. So what are those outcomes? The ones we started with, are those executive agenda items. In my experience, that is the big money opportunity, right? If you come in, it often means that you're not really competing with anybody else because you found something that they haven't got an RFP out, but it's also the highest risk for you because it's a big investment. You've got to be a trusted advisor, which with a company like this, that's not 5 phone calls, Jake, is it? Right? It's like they're going to get to know you. They're going to get to trust you as a person. If you look at everything on the website, everything about their culture, they are people. So this is a long-term investment. So you'd want to have a big ticket item sale to do a provocative sell to these guys, I think. So that's it. That's the foundation for what you're about to hear from Jake that we heard. I'm going to hand to you, my friend.
All right, so we'll go into it. I'll spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes going through a little bit about, some just different plans of attack, trying to take some of this. Again, I mean, I don't know how many angles there are right now. Like all of you should, I don't care what you sell your product. Hopefully you're like frothing at the mouth right now. You're just like, oh my gosh, I've got something. I'm going to call this out because I'm going to go into the individual groups. What I did is basically a teardown of 2 individual groups and how I would build a plan of attack against those groups and some of the things that I would highlight. I didn't do like a full blown account plan. I'm going to show you a template for that. We'll share the template too about what we do, and we're actually putting together a full account strategy. One of the most interesting things I think about this team that you don't see a lot is I want you to look at Rob Mills and Christy here, right in the middle. Rob is the EVP of Tech, Digital Commerce, and Strategy. Christy's the head of marketing. That's interesting. Why is that interesting? Well, usually the tech guy is not in charge of digital commerce. Usually that's marketing's world. Usually marketing owns it. So these are the types of things that I look for almost immediately. I start to look for, okay, what does this person do? I want to call out something else for a lot of you. Again, when you're thinking about this, you've got John, who's the chief stores officer, Seth, who's the chief merchandising officer. What are the differences in their job? Well, he's doing he's productivity. I'm going to get into it. So with a lot of these things, like, look, if you don't understand your buyer personas and you don't do just a little bit of this thinking, I'm already thinking, okay, Rob, he might handle this, he might do this, Christy might handle this. Okay, now the puzzle is going to start to kind of, take shape of how I'm going to try to put some of these pieces together. Oh shit, I should have slipped to this. Take a quick screenshot of this. This is what Matt was going through before. This is just the different messaging, kind of elements to think about. Most of what I rarely go with the full frontal. That's not my move usually. Usually I'm more of a develop, fragment type of seller. But again, I love what Matt called out when it's the smart thing to go straight at someone. And again, just thinking about when's the right time to do that as well too. So I'm going to pull this up real quick. Actually, share that. Let's see. Oh, there we go. All right, I've got the Q&A now. So hold on a sec. I've got to pull up Zoom. Okay. I'm going to unshare, new share. There we go. Just going to share this real quick. All right, Matt, can you guys see my screen again?
Template account, yes.
Perfect. So this is a full-blown account template that we use. Again, this is for a client, so you'd have like your products here, what you think about. And what we try to do is whenever we put these together is just really think about, and like I said, we'll share this template with everyone too. Actually, I might be able to share this template. Is again, we try to just get everything in one centralized area, right? Understanding again, out of everything that Matt talked about, this is really about combining it. There's some different softwares that work that people use. I finally just don't quite do it for me. So we use this. So again, similar customers, great. Who do I might maybe want to reference? Okay. Do we have any initial traction with this customer, right? Do we have any, again, like what are they spending with us? What are their top objectives? What do we do that aligns to those objectives? What are the obstacles? Well, again, if the obstacles, you got to be realistic. Too many people with enterprise sales, they're big, they must have money. Well, guess what? If you're a mobile development shop, maybe they're going to need support, but I'm not leading with like your mobile app, right? And some of the initiatives that he talked about that have already sailed. This ship has sailed. Okay, now you might be able to bolt on or improve, but I think a lot of people don't spend enough time. For me, with these big meetings, with these big conversations, I only prepare objections, especially once I get the first meeting. When I get the first meeting with that executive roundtable, I'm nitpicking what are all the objections, all the initiatives, all the things that are going down, and therefore, how can I preempt those? I feel like, Matt, you might see this too, and it happens in enterprise sales. People get into meetings, they get an objection, and then they act surprised. It's, oh my gosh, somebody had an objection. Of course they have an objection, right? They always have an objection, right? The relationship map of key stakeholders. So again, I'm not going to go through this. Like I said, I'm going to share details on this for everybody. But again, it's that powerarchy, it's that hierarchy. I'm trying to get a real sense for who these individuals are, how they might play together. And that's why I called out that Rob and Christy. And Matt, I don't know about you, I don't see that very often. So I don't see where a tech person is actually the head of digital commerce when they have an SVP of marketing.
I'm seeing a bit of it. I agree with it's unusual, but the chief digital officer title, sure, I'm seeing a bit of that.
Absolutely.
But to your point, one of the things I want to add on to that is this concept of stakeholders and relationship mapping. Enterprise sales is a team sport. So you must build a peer-to-peer relationship connection list to say who at our company is going to connect. Because if you don't, you're going to get crushed by the teams that do, right? You don't win alone and you don't lose alone.
Nobody cares if you brought in your CEO or COO. Matt and I were talking in our last conversation, and look, I got a meeting with the CEO of Kempton Hotels. I was probably 29. Okay. I'm bringing our CEO. I'm not sure, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no chance. I got a meeting with the head of talent acquisition, the head of North America, ping me, Jake, I just heard their CEO of Intel speak. Go reach out to the CEO of Intel. I'm like, okay. And sure, and I got a meeting with the head of talent acquisition. I showed up I brought like 3 people. Like, I realized very early in my career, especially around enterprise and big deals, I just got my job is really just quarterback. I quarterback, and in the meeting, I project manage, step away, I insert chess piece 1, pull them back, insert chess piece 2, pull them back. And I feel like that is really great enterprise selling, is project management and quarterbacking, like you said, which I think is absolutely critical. So, okay, so I went ahead and pulled out, okay, so what if I was going after digital? What if I wanted to take a digital route toward, again, going after these people? So I went, obviously, we got our boy Rob here, and then the interesting part is to look at some of the different people on Rob's team. So Tim Putman is this gentleman in the top left. He doesn't look like Rob. So I'm like, oh, okay, so this guy's a little more innovative. Then we've got Jessica Holmes here. Jessica is National Initiatives Marketing Manager. And when you look at her, she talks about, like, she's got a whole LinkedIn banner that talks about how she's a marketing leader, a brand manager, etc. So immediately in my mind, I'm starting to think about how these pieces fit together. I'm like, okay, Rob is been there. I think Rob has been there. How long has Rob been there? Like 15 years? Something like that?
Yeah, crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And he's had a bunch of different roles. And he's moved up. Tim's been there for a couple of years. Jessica's been there for a few years. Christy, who's the SVP of marketing, she came over from Home Depot in 2000. Actually, she had a brief stint where she was doing consulting. And then she came over, I want to say in like 2013, 12. So she's been there also for like 8 years. And that's the SVP of marketing. So these are the people that are involved in digital. Again, and I got to think in my head, okay, there's this thing where Rob is digital commerce. Christy's SVP of marketing. They've got a director of marketing. And just, Tim, when Tim talks about his background on his LinkedIn profile, Tim talks a lot about their agency relationships. So guess what? Now, from what my research on Tim is the person who manages their digital agency, right? And all he talks about, that's his jam. That's what he does. He manages their digital agency relationships. Okay, all right, so here's Tim. So now I'm thinking, I've got Tim over here. Okay, agencies, shit. So agencies, if I had some type of ad tech, right? Then chances are like maybe the agency is going to be involved here. That's probably a 10, right? So I think what a lot of people, what I do when I'm first kind of digesting this is I think about the people, and I think so often in their roles, and then I go into the initiatives, and then I plan some of my plan of attack, and
The key point,
so
Jake, I think you're
yeah,
making
go
here,
for it.
people might not be obvious to people, is you got to think about what the human cares about, not what's good for the company. People get confused between the role and the human. The question is,
Exactly.
what does Rob care about? What's going to make his career accelerate? If he takes on our initiative, will that make him a thought leader in his space? That's interesting to him. It doesn't matter that it returns $50 million to TSC. It's like, what does it do for him, right? We have to remember, and how are they measured?
Yep, that's exactly it. And again, and hopefully that's what you see me doing here is um, I'm not thinking about, oh, my product. I don't care about what the product I sell does not matter. I need to go focus first on the humans and understanding what they care about and getting a map and a landscape of this team, this department, and what they care about, right? And then I've got my list of initiatives. Don't worry, I'm not thinking about that, but at first I'm not. And I think I talked to a lot of people about this. When I do my prep and when I do a discovery process, I have a blank mind. I have no agenda. Meaning I don't try to make my product a fit for anything. I don't think when I do this when I do a plan of attack here, like we're talking about, I don't have an agenda. I'm factual. I'm just pulling out who are the stakeholders, who probably needs to be involved, what do they do? Do I have a clear understanding of what that looks like? What are their initiatives? Then I go. Then I go and think about me. So for me, again, I just made up products. I didn't know what I was doing. I just picked random products. So I chose to focus on, there's a couple areas that Matt talked about. One was e-commerce conversion and mobile, right? So again, going from 1 to 6% of your e-com, um, but I want you to understand it, just so you know, in their peer group, that is behind. They are behind. Okay, like again, like doing that is a massive leap for them, but some of their counterparts are already doing significantly more online, right? So they also they're not stupid. This goes back to that question that Marcus has. I'm not going to say like your competitors are like, yeah, no, like we know this. Thanks, right? Again, Lowe's online sales are up 150% as well. And also I'm going to hit on this omni-channel approach. So again, if you remember, Christy came from Home Depot. Christy spent 8 years at Home Depot before. Now, granted, she's been at Tractor Supply. And obviously, these guys pay attention to Home Depot, right? If you think about the things that they do, right, outside of the livestock piece, all the rest of those business units and where they're trying to grow, they're going to care about this. And again, Matt mentioned 80% for Tractor Supply. Home Depot's 60. I mean, these numbers are ridiculous. And again, 60% of online sales for Home Depot are buy online, pick up in stores. Tractor Supply is saying 80%. So omni-channel for these guys is going to be massive. Okay. It is going to be, and again, when I think about going to the merchandising manager and just Seth, and I'll get into Seth here in a second, all these things play together in how I'm starting to formulate, okay, what are the areas of opportunity for these individuals? So again, what are my possible angles here? So for Christy, the Home Depot angle. Christy, look, you're the SVP of marketing. You're doing more and more marketing digital that's ending up in store. So for you, Christy, you know, like what we're going to talk about is how do we think about that omni-channel experience? With Rob, again, I talked about Rob's uniqueness of his role, being focused on technology and digital, right? Again, and some of the things, a unique position to use AI and ML without the barriers that typically exist between marketing and tech, right? I can talk to Rob about that, and Rob is going to get that. Mobile experience, and I'm going to talk about this. I've got a nice little chart. Mobile experience, UX, okay? Because rural cell phone versus smartphone users. This little chart I pulled in the bottom right, just so you know, 24%. So this is urban, right? Above it are urban and suburban. 24% of people in rural markets have a cell phone and not a smartphone. Okay, well, guess what? What if I sell a UX thing? What if I sell an optimization? If I'm Rob, I'm thinking about my mobile app has to be much more complex than the typical person's mobile app because I'm dealing with almost 1 in 4 users that are a cell phone user. This stat, by the way, this is like December of 2019. This is from Pew Research. So again, I think there's something there. I'm like, ooh, this is an insight. And again, how I got there, and let me just tell you how I even dreamed up this thing. Is I said, okay, mobile app, okay, mobile experience. And again, going back to some of the things that Matt talked about, then I think rural communities. And I'm like, mobile rural. And guess what I did? I used Google. And I Googled mobile users, rural US markets. Beep, this popped up. Right. So that's what'll happen. I'll come up with something. I'll come up with an idea, mobile, and based on my research, then rural. I'll put it together to something that's going to be compelling and an insight that they are going to think is clever or interesting or different. Tim, I said the agency background. Jessica is potential champion and call out innovation ideas. She's not high enough up, but there might be some interesting things that she might be interested. There's actually a thing called a Rural Innovation Index, if you didn't know. So with Jessica, I might try to feed her a few ideas, just make her smart, connect with her on LinkedIn, share a piece of content, tag her, comment on a post. Again, I look at these people here, right? So you guys can see here, Tim, guess what? Tim's posted weekly. I was the only person who commented on Tim's last post. I was the only one. Jessica and Rob aren't posting for months, but guess what? I went into their activity. They're on LinkedIn liking and commenting on posts every single day and every week. Right? So a lot of people, they look at LinkedIn and they go, well, they're not posting. Doesn't mean they're not active. Right? And so again, when I formulate like really the plays I want to run, these are the things I think about. Okay, last but not least, and then I want to get into some tactics. So the other angle is more around store ops and merchandising. Again, understand the difference between Seth, this gentleman in the right. You can tell that they all had their headshots taken at a very similar place. Seth is merchandising. John is store ops. So you got to understand in these dynamics, there's a friend and sometimes a push relationship. Chief store officer, what's a chief store officer do? Well, chief store officer cares about productivity, safety, workplace, like all of that. Merchandising is like sales, and chief store officer cares about sales too, for sure. They're KPI'd on that. But Seth's one of his big initiatives is store productivity. It is per square foot optimization. What else is Seth? And what else is John? You know what John's big initiative is right now? It's Project Fusion. Project Fusion is a store remodel initiative that they have going on right now to modernize their stores, right? We talked about side lot transformation, sales per square foot. Again, I really like this omni-channel. I just think what you got to realize, this goes to Matt. What did Matt show you? He showed you that thing, the environment, then the department, then the company, then the department. So the reason I like this omni-channel is think about what this has created for them. 80% of foot traffic is coming in and going out immediately. But Seth is trying to increase his cost per square foot. Right? So when I think about developing messaging for some of these people, right? So again, I'm just going to skip ahead to go through this. And let me see if I can get this thing to play here. I can't promise anything. I've tried to get it to play like 3 times. So this is a video that I made for Christy. Okay. Now, granted, look, if I was really trying to get this, I would probably switch my angle up. I'd have something here, etc. But I just wanted to show it. It's a little long. I'd probably do like a couple more takes to try to get it down to about 45 seconds. But here, I think I need to change my, yep. All right, so I'm going to click it, new share, desktop, share, not that desktop, this one.
Nice island, did you buy that?
I did, that's Catalina. All right, and then I think I need to move my speaker, I did test this, to my MacBook. Okay, so you all can tell me if you can hear this. I hope that you can. And let's see what I said to Christy here. As I look to the side first. Can you hear that?
0. No, I think the volume's set to 0.
Did you hear anything, Matt, when I played that?
I think the volume's set to 0.
Oh, now I can't hear anything. Wonderful. All right, here we go. Matt, could you hear that?
Oh.
I'm back. Could you hear that?
I can't hear the video.
You couldn't hear the video? Damn it. All right, so some of you are going to have to watch this amazing video on your own. But again, e-commerce purchase and in-store pickup, 60% of sales and growing, right? And again, for Tractor Supply. So what this video did is I highlighted some of the insights that I saw from online, insights from the industry, and how I think that that's impacting marketing leaders in retail. So again, you can watch my video. It was pretty amazing, if I do say so myself. So that'll be in there. But again, why? Again, how much, Tractor Supply, let's think about that. Christy's been there for 8 years. Rob's there 15. All of them been there for a long time. Video is going to stand out. It's going to be different. It's going to be interesting. They're not getting that. They're getting reached out to by a lot of different types of people. So I like that, right? So here's some like email, like how I'm going to use this stuff, right? Hey, Rob, I had a chance to watch you on the quarterly earnings call and specifically the release of the new mobile app. To the point. Okay, look, here's the thing. I don't love using bold all the time in emails. And guys, just, I'm not going to get into like the best practices of writing an email template. I wrote these. If this was my account, I'd probably workshop it a little bit more, but I feel good about where they're at. So again, after our team downloaded, again, think about how differentiated it is from the bullshit that your enterprise team is sending today, which is like, I saw your quarterly earnings call and I know that the mobile app was important. And we help with that. Nope. I'm going to show that I have an insight. So our team downloaded it. We immediately saw, what we immediately saw is the amount of people using it in rural markets. 24% of people in markets have cell phones and not smartphones, which means UX and page load has to be very different. And then here's my pitch, right? We do this, right? Guess what? That's what we do at blah, 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 right? Here's a key. This is why a lot of you also aren't booking enterprise meetings. Let me tell you why. You guys asked for a meeting for next week. Are you fucking delusional? Do you think Rob Mills is the chief digital, teach commerce, and chief tech? You think Rob's schedule's not booked next week? And then there's Thanksgiving. So guess what? I'm going to ask for a meeting 3.5 weeks from now. My friends, if you're reaching out to an executive at a publicly traded company, half the reason, well, let me know what your schedule looks like next week. Next week? Come on. Like it is the dumbest mistake that I see people make that is so easy to fix. Again, with the holidays coming up, let me know if it works to reach out to your EA to book time on the 2nd at 4 CST. Talk soon. Happy very early Thanksgiving. Boom. That's it.
Right. And what you're doing here, I think, demonstrating to the earlier point, is you're picking something that they won't necessarily already have expertise in. You've taken an unusual insight, which is that 24% point, and tied it to their company, which I love, because I don't now have to be an expert in retail. I just have to be an expert in that functional, that narrow slice, and you've gone deep. It's beautiful.
That's exactly it. And again, this call to, I want to highlight this again. This is a reason you're not booking enterprise meetings too, is again, I said, let me work with your EA, right? I already know, because guess who's actually reading this email? His EA. What does she say when she thinks this? Oh, okay. Well, look at that. He called me out. Verse, he's a senior executive. Of course he has an EA. Okay, next one, integrating tech and digital. This one is like the AI angle. My team sat over your section of the earnings call 2 weeks ago, and we dove into your comments on integrating AI to provide a one-to-one experience digitally, among the other use cases. Boom, boom. I saw this thing, very specific, AI one-to-one. We see 90% of companies want to make the investment in AI for this personalization, but most of the time it ends up being manual, fake, or just not moving the needle. This is okay. I'd probably workshop that a little bit more. But since you increased online sales from 1 to 6%, it will be AI that gets us. And again, I use the word us very clearly. Think about a lot of the things that Matt talked about their language, how they talk about their teammates. So I'm going to start to sneak in us, we, this type of language. Now, you don't want to overuse it because then it's cheesy. So just be smart about that. Just be, just be smart about that. Okay. Again, we are the leader in AI that can run millions of I made up another product. Let me know how December looks. At a minimum, a competitive analysis based on other retailers' use cases, and I'll make a note to send a pre-read.
So that tells me I'm going to get value from this meeting regardless. As an executive,
exactly.
Whether I want your product or not, you're going to give me something for free that's valuable. I'm interested.
Exactly. And I know, guess what every executive wants? They want a pre-read. Right? I just, that's what every executive wants. Last, and then let's jump to some Q&A, is my man Seth here. Again, I use the bolds again. It's just because some of these are a little long. I don't love bolds, but anyway, whatever. So I enjoyed the earnings call. It appears your group has its hands full with this, and I highlighted this thing, working with John's team to optimize our square foot sales. When I listened to the Home Depot earnings call, they're seeing 60% of orders online picked up. I audited their pickup process and identified 2 areas for TSC that I think you can capitalize on: parking lot buying and better upselling of point at pickup. Our software optimizes this for retailers by tracking consumer behavior, making personalized, blah, 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 right? Same, and then I just use the same call to action. Again,
Awesome.
Here's what I do. It's about industry. I'm all over. I'm your guy. Look, I'm staying on top of everybody's trends. And so I think, again, too often whenever we get into this stuff, we're so focused on our product as opposed to something new, something interesting. And so that's what, what I hope all of you take this is a lot of you take that insight with you, that a lot of this messaging is, and time-wise, I probably spent, because Matt did all the hard work, let's be honest. Matt pulled out some insights for me, so I didn't have to do that. So he had his 2 hours plus. I probably spent 2 hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that too. And again, I would have put together
retakes on your video getting your hair right, wasn't it? Is that right?
Exactly. I gotta make sure it's right, make sure the lighting's all right here and everything. So yeah, exactly. All right, everyone. So we've got a little bit of Q&A time here. One person asked, social, LinkedIn, do you ever leverage video campaigns via LinkedIn? The answer is yes, if they're active. Again, I look and see if they're active. A lot of the modern sequences that we're building for people is, it starts LinkedIn, but guess what? Like, I don't know if you noticed, Christy, who's the SVP of marketing, she's not active. So then guess what? I skip steps 1 through 5 and go straight to calls, emails, stuff. So a lot of people, I think I lead with social because, again, for Tim, I'm the only person that comments on Tim's post. Now, guess what? I got a reminder set up next week to look at Tim's post again. Guess what? I go comment on Tim's post again. I'm the only commenter. Tim Putnam 100% knows my name. 100% knows who Jake Dunlap is. Then I slow played another week, and then I send the DM. Boom. Right? Too many people I'm trying to get my foot in the door here. I want to make sure I add value when I do it, but I'm not rushing with social in particular. But if they're not on social, I skip right ahead to doing the other stuff.
Perfect.
All right. Question for you, Kyle Garvin. Are you reading the entire 10K or 10Q, or do you go straight to MD&A?
I do, which is management discussion and analysis. I do that. Yes, I don't do that. It depends. Like back in the day when I was selling outsourcing solutions, I read the whole thing and did a balance sheet analysis to figure out how I could actually move the needle for them. Would write a very, very tactical opinion based on how I can help them reduce SG&A expenses. I think, Jake, maybe one in the future, if people didn't hate this, we could do one based around a 10Q, 10K analysis without getting too technical, but just showing what you can do with that. But the other one, to answer the question more fully, is management discussions of risk, right? That's my favorite because that's right. Like they call out risks to their business. And, we all want to sell painkillers, not vitamins, right? So if you can help solve or ameliorate some of those risks, you're golden. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think, as you go back, the other thing, what Matt pulled out when he showed you, they did that nice pie chart for you about the breakdown of their business.
I did,
but
Dan, that's why it was 2 hours.
Oh, you did it? Yeah.
Well,
Perfect. All right. Well, but that's my point. And I think in a lot of these reports, you'll see that breakdown of business. And then if you go and you think that they're XYZ, but that part of the business that you impact is a really insignificant part, and it's not mentioned as a growth area, you might want to try to find something different. So that if you go later on in the annual report, they'll usually break down by business line where they're at. And that's another kind of favorite place for me is to say what's growing really aggressively year over year, what's not, what are they talking about investing in, any type of partnerships or I think we did a teardown at Best Buy many years ago. And it's like, man, what you don't realize about Best Buy is in the warranty business. They're not in the electronics business. Yeah. It is insane. Where Best Buy makes all its money, all its profit is in the warranty business. You might think that they're like, and again, if you had a product for blah, 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 they're talking about they need to move more warranties. So it's just those types of nuances. And I got that from reading their annual report. I didn't know that. I intuitively, as I thought about it, I'm like, well, that makes sense. But there's just so much nuances when you understand where they make revenue to, how they actually make money.
Important point too, that like we don't have to be experts in 10Q, 10K, because guess what? What you can do is subscribe to or follow the analysts that report on those companies. That saves you a ton of time because the CEO really cares about what the analysts are saying about their company and what the risks and opportunities are. So if you can attach to that, saves you a lot of time. It's golden, instant insight.
Kevin asked this, and this will be our last one. Guys, all of you, thank you so much for attending. We went a little bit over. I apologize in advance. Not really, but we delivered so much value. I don't really give a shit. Kevin asked, and I want to turn this one over to you, Matt. what resources do you lean on for private companies? So we talked about public. Is there anything about private? I mean, there's Owler and there's some other stuff too, but you know, how would you go about finding similar type stuff with private companies? You know, or at least thinking about this.
Yeah, super hard, but frankly, it comes down to humans, actually. You can get so much from Owler or TechCrunch or whatever else that you're doing, depending on what industry they're in. But for me, I look for loose connections and ask people to give me a 15-minute coffee chat.
That's it, dude. That's exactly what I do. So the key is you just got to ground and pound a little bit more. So let's say if I sell a sales tech, I might reach out to a few SDRs. Hey, I'm doing a research on SDR excellence. Are you guys using a sales engagement platform right now? Bop, 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 bop. Yeah, we're using this. Boom, they respond. Then I go reach out to the next 50. Hey, you know, what are the biggest gaps you see? Boom, boom, boom. And then that's how I'm coming at you to take over your sales engagement. Hey, I've talked to 50 of your reps, and this is what they said, and let's set up time to meet.
I got to show everyone quickly. So 26 years ago, I started my career at Hewlett Packard in that building right there in Auckland, New Zealand, where I'm talking to you from, and managed isolation right now. And back then, there was no Google. No Google. So what did you do?
No shit. I didn't. Yes, exactly.
Right. And frankly, a lot of people went on email. What did we do? We wrote letters. That's a story for another time.
I love it, man. We used to do stuff again. Like I grew up in a similar era, like mid 2000s, where, you know, it's like you could Google some stuff, but it was really difficult, and you just had to go and get the information. We didn't have LinkedIn to go and run a report of 50. I had data.com or something, right? So
nothing.
Exactly. So cool. All right. Well, look, Matt, thank you, man. This was a ton of fun. I really hope all of you had a real amazing experience here. Hit us up on LinkedIn. I know there's still a bunch of questions. Just hit us up, hit Matt up, hit me up, whatever you guys want to do, no problem. We'll be sharing this. I expect all of you to be sharing this with your enterprise teams. I think we're going to make this a series. I think we're going to keep doing, you know, kind of staying on this as long as Matt and I can keep making time to do it. But, and then maybe what we'll do for the next one is we'll like pick a lucky winner or something, like, or, you know, we'll pick someone who can, do it, and we'll do their company for them, and then they'll turn it over to their boss, and their boss is like, oh my gosh, this person's the top rep. So, all right, my friend, you enjoy. Matt, thank you. A pleasure as always. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in, and stay tuned for more from us on Enterprise Selling. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.